Tonight, House lawmakers are set to return to Capitol Hill, and it is time to prepare for drama, potentially lots of it. There is a new feud that is brewing within Speaker Kevin McCarthy's Republican Party. His far-right flank is demanding an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, or else he may not get their support on a lot of really important deals that could end up leaving the government shut down. 8 months after the hardliners relented and struck a deal to give him the Speaker's gavel, McCarthy is now facing his biggest test yet. And those members have the ability to oust him from leadership with just one snap vote. McCarthy is also facing pressure from outside Capitol Hill from former President Donald Trump, who is now openly previewing what a second Trump term could look like. And it includes enacting revenge on his political opponents.
But remember, it's a Democrat charging his opponent. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. That means that if I win and somebody wants to run against me, I call my attorney general. I say, listen, indict him. Well, he hasn't done anything wrong that we know of. I don't know. Indict him on income tax evasion. You'll figure it out.
Let's get straight to the source tonight with South Carolina Republican Congresswoman and member of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Nancy Mace, who is here with us in person. Thank you so much. Do you support launching an impeachment inquiry into President Biden?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say at this point. I think there's a difference between an impeachment vote and an inquiry. The inquiry would give us another tool in the toolbox specifically to look at Joe Biden's bank records. Everyone's screaming about the evidence. Where's the evidence? The bank records hold all of the evidence. And if the American people, Caitlin, if you could see the suspicious activity reports that I have seen on the Biden family, you would probably support an impeachment inquiry just as a tool to get more information on specifically the bank information, bank records of Joe Biden and his family members. That's an important tool in our toolbox.
So does that mean you do support an
I'll
impeachment
support
inquiry?
an impeachment inquiry. Impeachment vote is totally separate, but an inquiry I would support at this juncture.
And why would you support that? Because you're on one of the committees that is investigating this. There's 3 committees investigating all of this, and there's a special counsel that is investigating Hunter Biden, has been investigating him for 5 years now. So why does there need to be an impeachment inquiry if there's already several ongoing investigations?
Yeah, great question. My understanding is it will give us access to Joe Biden's bank records. And if we can connect the dots and show the American people where the bribery allegations stand, where the money laundering stands, showing through vis-a-vis the bank records, that is a way to do that. If you could see what I have seen, and we can't share the SARS reports because they're confidential and that would be against the law, so we have to prove it via other means, via the bank records, for example. If that gets us Joe Biden's bank records, then I'm going to support it because everyone should know what actually happened, what kind of businesses were involved, how Joe Biden was involved, the kind of money that was involved in these schemes is astounding. You would be shocked. You would blush, Caitlin, if you'd seen what I had seen.
You've said this before, and we spoke with you after you went to the Treasury Department and looked at those reports. But I mean, you, as a member of Congress, do have access to those reports. You went and saw them yourself. So I think a lot of people ask, you've been home for 6 weeks. There's been no new evidence that's been uncovered or brought forward. So what is the basis now for having?
Well, I think, there are more people to subpoena, whether that's Hunter Biden, whether that's the bookkeeper, whether that's getting Shokin in to testify. There are a lot of witnesses out there that saw things that were part of meetings that Joe Biden was a part of, that were part of the transactions, that were potentially part of the bribery scheme. I mean, all that evidence the American people should be able to have and see. The American people can't.
None of it has risen to that.
Well, the American people can't see the suspicious activity reports. Those are confidential documents. So any piece of evidence, right or wrong, I want the American people to see all of it, whether it backs us up or does not. The people deserve the truth and nothing but the truth.
Isn't it supposed to be the evidence that leads you to pursue impeachment and an impeachment inquiry?
Well, that's what the inquiry is for.
But there's
to
already
get more
3
evidence.
investigations. I think that's where people are confused because it's not like there's no investigation.
We don't have Joe Biden's bank records yet. And so one way to do that, my understanding, would be through an impeachment inquiry. So if that's what gets us those bank records, then I'm going to support it. I'm just saying, if you could see what I have seen, and I believe you deserve to see that.
But have you seen direct evidence related to President Biden? Because that's what we have not heard.
Well, we have to connect the dots, and that has to be through the bank records. If his bank records show nothing, the American people should know that too.
And you think it's worth launching that
100%.
to get to that?
I do. They do. If that's what gets us the bank records, that's what we should use.
The other point of confusion here is that all of this is being tied to funding the government.
Separate things.
I don't, well, not for
Yeah,
members of your own party, because Marjorie Taylor Greene says she won't vote to fund the government unless that House impeachment inquiry is passed. There are a lot of Republicans. You said you would support it and you'd vote for it.
I'm not voting
but there's a lot who
I'm
would
not voting to fund the government because Republicans and Democrats have spent too much. Like, I think holding hostage an impeachment inquiry is wrong. When you look at what we just did 3 months ago on the debt ceiling, Republicans and Democrats alike just added $18.8 trillion to the debt. That is the reason why all of us should be voting against these massive spending measures.
But it's holding the government hostage for the impeachment inquiry, right?
Yeah. No, that in a sense that would.
That's what she's saying she would be doing.
I'm voting against the excess spending because of the out of control spending. I'm not going to hold the impeachment inquiry hostage, is what I'm saying, is my difference.
I mean, her comment on it was, our conference needs to stop capitulating to the left, members that are in blue districts. That's not what donors are donating money for. And we need to stop allowing Biden district Republicans to hold up our agenda. But isn't the concern that making moderates vote for this would put them at risk?
Oh, 100%. It puts them at risk. But also, Biden district Republicans are the reason that Republicans are in the majority, have the slim majority that we have today. And if we want to keep that majority, we have to keep those folks in their seats. And so you don't do that by making Republicans in moderate districts walk the plank on abortion, walk the plank on women's issues, walk the plank on birth control, walk the plank on an impeachment vote. Like, those are all the reasons why we will lose next year if we continue down that path.
But then why have the impeachment inquiry if it's going to put your majority at risk?
An inquiry is an investigative tool. It's different from an impeachment. On the impeachment side, the House would investigate, the Senate would essentially hold a trial. But no, I mean, the Senate's not going to hold a trial. There's not going to be 60 votes. It's not happening. It's window dressing on impeachment. But an inquiry is an investigative tool. That's the difference between an impeachment vote and an inquiry.
But you're talking about the subpoena power. I mean, you have that now.
I don't think we've issued enough subpoenas.
But isn't that a leadership problem? Shouldn't you be talking to the chair of your committee about that?
I talk to our leadership in our committee all the time, and they're being judicious in how they do it. They're being deliberate. I want it now, but there's a deliberative process. I think that they are going about it at the right pace, at the right speed, but it takes time. It takes money. You can't go and just ask a foreign country for foreign bank records and say they're going to show up overnight. That's not how it happens. It does take time. It does take money. It does take resources. But
if you pursue the impeachment inquiry, do you really think that House Republicans would not pursue full impeachment, an impeachment vote?
It should depend on the evidence. As you just mentioned earlier, it should depend on the evidence. The evidence should guide us. The facts should guide us on whether or not we have an impeachment vote.
Could you actually get an impeachment inquiry vote passed? Is there enough Republican support?
I haven't whipped the vote. I don't know. We'll know more. We're back in session this week, and we'll know more when we're on the ground.
A lot of this has been tied to Speaker Kevin McCarthy. There are increasing demands on him to pursue this. He has not said yet whether or not, yes, he will, or whether he won't. If his leadership is called into question potentially as soon as this week, do you still support him as the leader?
I do support him as leader. I don't know who would be waiting in the wings for that job. We have a very diverse party, whether you are a MAGA, whether you are a libertarian, whether you are a moderate or a centrist like myself. We have a diversity of opinions. He's been able to bring those blocks together. We call them the five families. He's been able to bring those families together. I typically am an island of one. I don't mind operating that way, but I also get a chance to have a meeting and speak to him and speak to leadership and tell them, where I stand as well. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have those conversations, to be able to negotiate votes, to be able to negotiate legislation with him. He's been very open to all the voices, and I hope that will continue.
You've had a very storied history with the former President Donald Trump. He said something on Friday night at a rally that I want you to listen to.
I win, and somebody wants to run against me. I call my attorney general. I say, listen, indict him. Well, he hasn't done anything wrong that we know of. I don't know. Indict him on income tax evasion. You'll figure it out.
That's what he was saying he would do if he wins a second term. I mean, but isn't that the definition of weaponization of federal government?
I can't tell by the tone if he's joking or if he's serious, but
isn't that the whole Trump? I mean, that's what everyone said about Trump every year.
I don't know. So, but I will say that setting the precedent of arresting your number one political enemy is a poor precedent to set. We don't want any president, current or future, to say, well, someone did it to me, they arrested me when I was running for president, I'm going to do the same to them. We don't want the tit for tat. All evidence, all due process should follow the facts rather than guide, an indictment or an arrest prematurely. I wish that they had waited. I think several of the indictments aren't really worth the paper that they're printed on. And I wish that they had waited until after the presidential primary, because we don't want to set that kind of precedent in the future, now or in the future at all, to give somebody else the power to do that.
I mean, you can't just get a subpoena and have this
You can
indictment.
still
It's not
run
like
for
it's
president.
President Biden doing it. I mean, there's evidence that these prosecutors have used to get subpoenas to have these indictments that are, I mean, obviously it'll be decided in a court of law, but it's not like there's no basis. He's saying he could just manufacture whatever against someone who's running against him and have his attorney general pursue it. Is that appropriate?
It'll be decided in a court of law, but it also
But is it appropriate for the Republican frontrunner, the party of law and order, to say, hey, I'm going to make up these charges about someone who's running against me if I am in president again?
It'll also be decided in the court of public opinion. It'll be decided at the ballot in the Republican primary, whether or not people think you should run for president, for example. All of that, the public gets to decide when they go into the ballot box and they press a lever to vote for president.
But what's your opinion on his comment there?
I can't tell if he's joking or if he's serious. Like, sometimes it's a joke, sometimes he's serious. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about it directly, so I don't know the tone with which he was going forth. I don't know. But I do know that arresting your political opponents during a presidential primary is not the precedent that either party should want to set now or in the future. And I think that should be bipartisan. I think everyone should be able to agree on that.
Yeah, it's certainly not the first time he's made those comments. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, you've got a busy week ahead of you. Thank you for joining us here tonight.
Thank you.
Up next, speaking